This is Undaunted.Life, a man's podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Thompson. Let's get into it. For this reason, God gave them up to dishonorable passions. For their women exchanged natural relations for those that are contrary to nature, and the men likewise gave up natural relations with women and were consumed with passion for one another, men committing shameless acts with men and receiving in themselves the due penalty for their error. That is Romans 1:26 through 27, kind of an ominous start, but don't worry, it'll all make sense. Guys, just one of the things I want to tell you right from the beginning is don't forget about the Daily Blade. Some of you are like, what's the Daily Blade? You should know about it, guys. That is the podcast that Joby and I have put together for you guys. It is a Monday through Friday daily podcast. It is 5 minutes and it's men's devotional. But don't think of it like devotionals that you've normally heard of that are real breathy and kind of lame. This is like locker room style. This is, safety meeting at, a work site or something like that, where we all kind of basically have the truck bed meeting and do all that. It's 5 minutes of Bible. We get it into your ears every single morning and then send you on about your day. If you're not subscribed to the Daily Blade, please go ahead and do that. And guys, I just got to tell you a little peek behind the curtain. We launched that January the 1st. And within the first few months, it was already bigger than Undaunted.Life, a man's podcast. And it's been around for forever. It has just been such a tremendous blessing to dudes. The number of people that reach out to Joby's team or reach out to me here and let us know how the Daily Blade has been a benefit to them, has given them a hunger for the Bible, has been tremendous for me personally. Doing the episodes, I have every other week or whatever. It's keeping me in the Word, it's keeping me thinking about how the Word can be delivered to you guys. So the Daily Blade, you can check out thedailyblade.com or wherever you get your podcasts. And as always, we're thankful for all of our donors on Undaunted.Life/donate. We love our monthly donors and the guys that drop in to give us one-time donations. It's a huge, huge help to us here. And also, if you have not left a review or shared this podcast with a friend, please go ahead and do that. Now, before we get into today's episode, I was talking, I need to make a quick correction. So the last time I did a solo episode, I don't know if it was last week or the week before that, I was talking about the Supreme Court decision. I was talking about several Supreme Court decisions, and I gave the wrong name for one of the 6-3 decisions that would allow parents to opt their children out of LGBTQ plus propaganda, in schools or whatever. So I said, for whatever reason, Carson v. Macon, which was a case for 2020 from 2022, so from a few years ago. But before I even released the episode, I realized it, but I couldn't go back and change it. But, it just kind of is what it is. So I'm correcting it now. The name of the case was Mahmoud v. Taylor. Mahmoud v. Taylor. So there you go. Sometimes I misspeak or put things, wrong in my notes and whatever. Which, by the way, I had a couple of guys online that were really unhappy with something that I said during the JT English interview, because during the JT English interview, I was going off on, my normal rant about how modern day churches and modern day pastors typically don't give guys a whole lot of tools to be good disciples, to be heads of their households, all those different things. And I said something along the lines of, what I was talking about was people think that Jesus never made anyone mad. Like he never, ruffled any feathers, that he was just kind of like this go along to get along guy. But the way I said it was kind of imprecise. I was like, yeah, people act like, Jesus never did anything wrong, and, kind of that type of thing. And some people are like, is Kyle saying that Jesus was a sinner? It's like, no. And so to those of you out there that, love to pick apart individual words or individual phrases, notice that people that do what I do for a living, we are content creators and we speak off the cuff for a living. Okay. So I've got a lot of grace for content creators that literally misspeak, because if you listen to the entire context, 45 seconds before that statement, the 45 seconds after that statement, you would obviously surmise that I was talking about how I was saying that there are people that think that Jesus was just this wispy-haired guy that never, made anyone mad and never got anyone all ruffled up or any of those types of things. So just use your brains when you're listening. Sometimes I misspeak. Hey, if you listen to the last, what are we at? Episode 780 something. Like, guys, I've misspoken a lot, and I'll go back and I'll be like, oh, why did I say that? But just give me the benefit of the doubt if you would. And also, I mentioned all these Supreme Court cases, and I totally forgot to mention another very, very important court case that as soon as I released the episode, I'm like, you doofus. Like, why didn't you mention this one? I didn't mention the 6-3 decision in Medina, Director, South Carolina Department of Health and Human Services versus Planned Parenthood, South Atlantic. And this case essentially gives the state of South Carolina the right to block taxpayer dollars from funding the number one baby murder company in the United States, and that's Planned Parenthood. And so that is going to dovetail into a lot of different things, even on this podcast. But essentially, this is paving the way for states like South Carolina or like Oklahoma or like Tennessee or Texas or any of these states that don't really like this whole baby murder thing from completely defunding Planned Parenthood. Because again, Planned Parenthood will say, oh, well, abortion is just a part of our business and it's just a part of women's health care and all these different things. No, they are a baby sacrifice facility. That's what they do. They allow women and, men that love to sire children but not father them to come in and sacrifice their children on the altar of convenience, which is the overwhelming majority of abortion cases. Don't let them, affect you with the hard cases. There are explanations for those as well. But I do love the decision. Obviously, thank God for the current makeup of the Supreme Court, where you have 5 solid conservatives, 1 squishy conservative, and then 3 insane people. But just thank goodness that we got a decision like that. So today in the quick hitters, we're going to be covering a lot of ground. So Chip and Joanna Gaines selling out to the LGBTQ agenda. Yep, that happened. The tragic floods in Kerr County, Texas. Former President Joe Biden's doctor pleading the fifth when asked if he covered up Biden's bad mental and physical health. Planned Parenthood losing funding from the federal government for 1 year. The University of Pennsylvania stripping male swimmer Leah Thomas's trophies and medals and issuing a formal apology for letting him compete in women's swimming events, and a 1-year-old baby being mauled to death by the family dog. I bet you can't guess what breed that is. But before I get into this, so I'm recording this on Monday. Most of you are seeing this on Thursday. So in the interim, we might lose John MacArthur. Okay, so it was announced yesterday during their church service that John MacArthur, who is very, advanced in age, that he has contracted pneumonia and he is not expected to make it. So the doctors basically have told him and his family, let's get your affairs in order, that you are going to succumb to this. So by the time you guys hear this, he may have passed. He may not have passed. Again, this is on Monday. You're hearing this on Thursday. But I didn't want, if he passed in the next couple of days and then I don't mention it on Thursday. But when he does pass, and if he does pass, we will do a full rundown of him and how important he was. But I just want to say that he's been very, very important to me. His Bible studies have been very important to me. And again, I've not agreed with everything that he's ever said or everything that he's ever preached, but he's been such a stalwart as it pertains to biblical doctrine. And, just the number of people that I know and like and support and learn from that know, like, support, and have learned from John MacArthur is substantial. So if he has passed, may he rest in peace. He is going to be resting in glory. I think, it's funny, I say the joke all the time, like no one's less assured of their salvation than after they listen to a John MacArthur sermon about the assurance of salvation. So even by John MacArthur standards, I don't know that John MacArthur's fruit is sweet enough, but I think for the rest of us, I think it's pretty assured where he is going to be spending eternity, and I think it's going to be a good place. So we need to move on and talk a little bit about Baylor University. So I was doing what I normally do. I'm kind of scrolling social media looking for news and different things to talk about. And I see a screenshot of an article from pinknews.com. So Pink News is an LGBTQ news, propaganda outlet from the UK. And the headline, this was a couple weeks ago, was Baylor University receives $643,000 grant to study and foster LGBTQ plus inclusion. Now, that was a surprising headline because Baylor's a private Christian university, Baptist university in Texas. Why is the UK reporting on this? What? Why they applied for a grant? Wait, they got a grant for what? And so I sent it to my buddy Adam, so one of my Foxhole guys. You've seen him on the forging table as well. He's a big Baylor guy. Him and his bride both, I think they met here and then both went to Baylor, or they met at Baylor or something like that. And so I sent this to him, and because again, it's a screenshot of an article. So is it AI? Did somebody make it? Was it a meme? And his immediate response back to me was, man, I hope that's not true. So I go to Pink News, I go to their website, and I find the Baylor article, and then I send it to him. Apparently, it was legit. And so Adam is deeply connected at BU to that whole community, right? And basically, he started getting to work. Like, he was trying to figure out, okay, where did this come from? Who applied for it? Which department? Okay, how did they get it? How did they determine the number that was given? All the things. And basically, he kept giving me updates every couple of days, like, dude, there's a growing groundswell here of people that are absolutely furious. There are people that have scholarships in their names and in family names that are calling the foundation office and saying, pull our scholarships. We're not going to be supporting the university anymore. There were a lot of big donors that were kind of flexing, talking to department heads, talking to the president, really kind of giving them the business for doing this. And then there was also kind of a nefarious thing. It was released on like a day or two before the long July 4th weekend. And so like if you want a news story to be buried, you release it on Friday afternoon, right? Because by the time the Monday morning news cycle starts, that story's, long since been buried. So it seems like they wanted to celebrate it, but not like too loud. And so Baylor may have wanted this to go under the radar, but that did not happen at all. So for some of you, even if you live here in America, you may not be super familiar with Baylor University. So just basic information. Founded in 1845. Originally, it was in Independence, Texas, and then it moved to Waco in 1886, where it still is today. It was founded by Baptist pioneers, Judge R.E.B. Baylor, Reverend James Huckins, and Reverend William Tyron. And so it's actually the oldest continually operating university in Texas. So very, very deep roots and commitment to the Baptist tradition. It's been affiliated, I think, since the beginning with the Baptist General Convention of Texas and is still affiliated with that till this day. Again, private university. It's a major research university. Yes, they do have PhDs. Depending on the year, we're talking 18,000 to 20-ish thousand students. So as a private Baptist Christian university, you would expect them as a university to be pretty clear on biblical doctrine, orthodoxy, orthopraxy, but let's just say it's been kind of checkered over the past decade or so. So many of you have heard some of these stories, but back in 2015 through 2017, there was this huge sexual misconduct scandal concerning their football players. It was a really big deal. It led to the resignation of the president of the university, Ken Starr, head football coach at the time, Art Briles, who was basically the best football coach that university's ever had, and then athletic director Ian McCall. And then in 2015, they actually removed language from the sexual conduct policy in their student handbook that said homosexual behavior is not in keeping with the university's values. Okay, that is the quote that they removed. Homosexual behavior is not in keeping with the university's values. And they removed homosexual acts, okay, as listed misconduct, okay? Who knows why they did that, but that's something that in their infinite wisdom they decided to do about a decade ago. But then there were a couple of controversies, which I believe led to the big story that we're going to talk about today. So one of them, we have this LGBTQ plus students at Baylor were seeking out official recognition for one of their student groups. It was called Gamma Alpha Epsilon. That spells gay in that alphabet, which advocates for inclusion and support. Okay, so Baylor repeatedly denied recognition of the student organization, citing its Christian sexual ethics, which affirm marriage as between one man and one woman. But then in 2021, Baylor's Board of Regents acknowledged the need to care for LGBTQ plus students, but still did not officially recognize such groups as, chartered student organizations. So, LGBTQ plus advocates from, all over the place and some alumni criticize the university for not affirming or supporting sexual diversity on campus. But on the other hand, many conservative alumni and donors, they praise the administration for basically holding the biblical line. But then in 2022, Baylor officially recognized its first LGBTQ plus student organization. It's called Prism. So the name Prism signifies refracting light and colors, and so symbolic of the diversity and inclusion of Baylor's, Christian mission, within Baylor's Christian mission, I guess you could say. And reportedly, the university as a whole affirms biblical sexuality, but their counselors that are on campus are actually prohibited from telling students that, think they're LGBTQ, that they're sinning, right? That they need to repent, that they need to change. Okay, so that's kind of the baseline in the background there. Sorry, quick sip of Jocko Go. By the way, Nitro Pop, Jocko Go, dude, I know I've talked about the pink lemonade and the icy lemonade for forever. That might be the GOAT flavor. So that's their newest flavor. Check that out. Promo code Undaunted so you can get a discount. But now that gets to July the 2nd, okay? So I'm going to have to read from the Pink News article because Baylor actually deleted their original press release about them getting the grant. I was just going to read that. So this is according to Pink News. I think that's the first shout out for Pink News on this podcast. So according to Pink News on July the 2nd, The private Baptist Research University, with a mission, quote, to educate men and women for worldwide leadership and service by integrating academic excellence and Christian commitment within a caring community, unquote, has been given a grant to foster LGBTQ plus inclusion. On the 30th of June, the university shared that the Center for Church and Community Impact, C31, has been awarded a grant from the Eula May and John Baugh Foundation, quote, to foster inclusion and belonging in the church, unquote, with an emphasis on understanding, quote, the disenfranchisement and exclusion of LGBTQIA plus individuals and women within congregations to nurture institutional courage and foster change, unquote. As reported by Good Faith Media, the Center for Church and Community Impact is a research center housed in Baylor's Diana R. Garland School of Social Work. C31 Director Dr. Gaynor Yancey said, the grant will focus on the lived experiences of emerging adults and will assist us in filling out the bigger picture of congregations' practices that result in an environment of belonging. The grant will enable the formation of focus groups and surveys of students in a bid to develop trauma-sensitive training materials for churches. So, essentially, they got a large grant to do a study so that they could conclude that, performing homosexual acts and going against God's creation of man and woman is actually not sin. Okay, so that's what all that is. This is a lot of money to create these groups where we already know what the conclusion is going to be. Yeah. All you old fuddy-duddies that, read the Bible and actually believe the words that are in there and think it's the word of God. You don't know. We know. Why? Because we have a degree in social work or something like that. And so the excitement from the LGBTQ plus people, around the globe from this story. Like, you should see some of the comments, like, just gushing. They're so excited about this, and for a lot of reasons, right? Because they're kind of infiltrating a Christian organization or Christian university. And then, obviously, predictably, there was outrage from actual Christians who are BU students and alumni, interested observers like me from around the globe. I mean, here's the thing. Focus on the Family might be the most milquetoast, like vanilla Christian organization on the planet. Like, let's just be right down the center. Even they came out and was given, Baylor crap publicly. And I mean, if Focus on the Family is, railing you publicly, you kind of know you done messed up. But there was a big time behind the scenes groundswell of negativity from the BU community, which I've already talked about. People making phone calls, people threatening to pull funding, people actually pulling funding. And so this was, something that Baylor thought would just kind of hit the headlines and go away. It just wasn't going away. So then on July the 9th, we got this press release from the BU president, Dr. Linda Livingston. So I'm actually going to read this in its entirety. So this is the entire letter. I think I put it in the show notes as well. So here we go. Dear Baylor family, I want to provide an important update regarding a recent matter involving a grant awarded to the Center for Church and Community Impact within the Diana R. Garland School of Social Work. This grant reported the center's academic research aimed at exploring inclusion and belonging in the church with a particular focus on LGBTQIA plus individuals in congregational settings. Dean John Singletary and Principal Investigator Dr. Gaynor Yancey have voluntarily offered to rescind their acceptance of this grant on behalf of the School of Social Work and return all associated funds to the granting foundation. Provost Nancy Brickhouse and I support this decision and agree this is an appropriate course of action and in the best interest of Baylor University. We remain committed to providing a loving and caring community for all, including our LGBTQIA plus students, because it is part and parcel of our university's mission that calls us to educate our students with a caring Christian community. Baylor also continues to strongly uphold the principle of academic freedom. As we reviewed the details and process surrounding this grant, our concerns did not center on the research itself, but rather on the activities that followed as part of the grant. Specifically, the work extended into advocacy for perspectives on human sexuality that are inconsistent with Baylor's institutional policies, including our statement on human sexuality. Please be assured that Baylor's institutional beliefs and policies remain unchanged. Our commitment to our Christian mission and our historic Baptist identity continues to guide our approach to academic, student life, and spiritual formation. We affirm the biblical understanding of human sexuality as a gift from God, expressed through purity and singleness and fidelity in marriage between a man and a woman. We recognize that this situation has caused concern and confusion for many within the Baylor family and among our broader community of churches, partner organizations, and supporters. This has been a learning opportunity for many I love when people say that. It's just so stupid to me. Anyway, this has been a learning opportunity for many involved in this situation as if they didn't know what was going to happen. We aim to work alongside our college and school leaders, faculty, and research community, particularly during these challenging times for higher education. Baylor, there's a shot at Trump, by the way. Baylor remains deeply committed in its unique role as a Christian research research university, one that encourages rigorous inquiry and thoughtful exploration of complex issues. We will continue to support our faculty and researchers in pursuit of meaningful scholarship while ensuring that such work aligns with our institutional processes. I hope this communication provides clarity into what had been a difficult week for many within the Baylor family. Thank you for your prayers and continued support for Baylor University. Sincerely, Linda A. Livingston, PhD, President. So here's what I can surmise in this response, to this statement, okay? It's very well-written, apparently not well-spoken. Here we go, Kyle. Very well-written, right? So they had a nice PR firm write that for them, but not good enough, right? I mean, this is obviously not good enough to make people feel confident in the long-term commitment of Baylor to biblical values, okay? Because here's the thing. We'll actually move on from that. Their words and actions don't match up, okay? Because you can't truly be committed to a biblical stance on marriage and sexuality while simultaneously accepting a grant essentially aiming to say that sin is in fact not sin. Because that's the entire thing. Do you honestly think the people at Baylor, the people that applied for this, had no idea what was going on within the church as it pertains to LGBTQ plus people, or as they say, LGBTQIA plus people? You think they had no clue? I mean, rescinding the acceptance of this grant, it's too little too late. Because here's the thing. You already applied for the grant in the first place, which is terrible and telling. You already accepted the grant, which is terrible and telling. And you know what's funny about this? And I was telling this to Adam. At this point, they should have just put on their helmets, battened down the hatchets, and let all this kind of like blow over and then just kept the money, right? Now, they probably would have lost more in funding from private donors and different things like that than they would have got from the $634,000 or whatever that they got in the grant. But why give back the money now? It's kind of like when people delete that social media post, right? So they post something on Twitter or they post something on Instagram and then they delete it. Deleting it actually brings more attention to it because it's kind of like the original press release that Baylor deleted right now. So you go there and the URL doesn't work anymore. That's worse because I can still go find it, right? I can find the original text. I know what it says, but now it's like, okay, you're trying to hide it. But it's like an elephant trying to hide behind a light pole, right? It's just like, okay, you're right there. Like I can see you. And President Livingston, here's the thing. Was there any repentance in that letter? Was there? No, there was no repentance. There was no acknowledgement that they had done anything wrong. That's very important. There was no acknowledgement that we didn't live up to our standards that we had set. She just felt too much heat. Because as a president of a university, if the money stops coming in, you're out, right? Well, I mean, they already lost the president of the university because of the cover up they were trying to do to, make sure their football team could stay, active and, do well in the Big 12. So you lose your president for something like that. Well, if you lose millions of dollars from donors, like it's not the foundation director that's going to get fired. It's you. President Livingston's head was on the chopping block. So she felt the heat. She thought, okay, we're going to lose more money than we're going to gain from this grant. We're taking the PR hit, but let's just kind of mitigate the circumstances. Let's, deal with the losses that we have. And then let's just back out here. But she didn't repent, right? She didn't say we should have never done this because here's the thing. She probably didn't know about this. She may have, but this was probably just something the people in the School of Social Work were doing. The president isn't looking at every single grant that's being applied for, probably. They apply for grants all the time, but she only did this because she felt the heat. So at this point, there's been a lot of think pieces and podcasts and social posts about this situation, trying to look at it from all kinds of perspectives. So you have to think, is this a story that's an example of institutional rot? Yes, it certainly is. Is this another argument that just shows that higher education for most kids is a farce and a complete waste of time and money? Because you're just essentially sending your kids to a place that's just going to help them become, a good gay communist. I think this is another story. That's an example of that. Is this an example of a university having, a bad checks and balances system, right? That I kind of just talked about that. And then operating in a way that violates even basic crisis PR. Yes, I think it's an example of that. But above all those things, this situation is about two things, okay? Number one, the leftist progressivism trying to infiltrate and change Christianity from the inside out. And secondly, intellectual and moral superiority. Essentially, Baylor University thinking that they know how to love people better than God does. Okay? So let's look at each one of those individually. Number one, leftist progressivism trying to infiltrate and change Christianity from the inside out. So Megan Basham has done a ton of work on this. She's been at the tip of the spear, especially with the writing of Shepherds for Sale. We had her on last year to talk about that, and she's just kind of kept up her work there. She has a great thread on Twitter that I'll summarize and I'll put in the show notes for you. But according to Megan Basham, this is a quote that she put out there. When she lived in D.C., Baylor President Linda Livingstone herself attended a church pastored by Julie Pennington Russell, who has been full LGBTQ affirming since 2014. Further, in Waco, Livingston has said she attends Calvary Baptist Church. In 2022, in a sermon in response to the overturning of Roe v. Wade, Reverend Hannah Coe, the senior pastor at that church, of course, claimed that the targeting of LGBTQ teenagers is an example of life-threatening consequences of political and religious action. Coe is now an associate pastor at an openly LGBTQ affirming church, so bad look for the president there. And as the Christian Post reported today, Professor Greg Garrett, chair of literature and culture, has transparently announced that he is not in alignment with the school's statement on marriage and sexuality, but is LGBTQ affirming. Last year, he accused author J.K. Rowling of having a hatred of trans people. Two faculty members also told me that John Singletary, dean of the School of Social Work, which accepted the LGBTQ grant, is also quietly confirming. Singletary is also a member of Livingstone's church, has brought in gay speakers just like Justin Lee, whose work is dedicated to changing church doctrine to no longer view homosexuality as a sin. In 2019, Livingstone especially singled out LGBTQ students as needing the school's support. In 2022, Livingstone allowed the campus LGBTQ club to march in full pride gear in the school's homecoming parade. In 2024, a faculty member reported to me that during the school's Beale Poetry Festival, gay poet Ruben Quesada, I almost said quesadilla, sorry. Ruben Quesada gave a reading that included a description of oral sex between two men. So that's all the reporting from Megan Basham there. So that should give you a little bit more insight into what's going on that campus. But another thing that she reported that is very, very problematic is that Baylor does not require a statement of faith to be signed by its faculty and staff. So they don't require their faculty and staff to even write on a piece of paper that they actually are believers in Christianity, that they believe in the gospel, that they believe in the Bible, that they believe in biblical doctrine, that they believe the Bible has authority, right? They don't require that, which should be very, very concerning to you. And then the great Allie Beth Stucky, she's done quite a bit of work in this space as well. So she actually had a thread on her Instagram. I'll read a couple of posts from her Instagram here. First, the recent grant, Baylor's Diana R. Garland School of Social Work applied for and accepted the $643,000 grant from the Baugh Foundation, which funds projects to organizations that seek to liberalize Christian institutions. A little bit later in the thread, this isn't the first time Baylor's taken far-left Baugh money. In 2018, for example, BU accepted a grant for a guide to navigate decisions to be more inclusive in their practices and policies specific to LGBTQ plus persons. In 2024, the Baugh Foundation funded the Building Resilient Congregations Research Pilot Project, where Yancey and her team worked with selected congregations in three distinct areas: accompaniment, trauma care, and LGBTQ plus discernment. Okay, so that's number one. Number two is intellectual and moral superiority. This is essentially Baylor thinking that they're in a position where they know how to love people better than God does. So they're making a habit of ignoring what the Bible says about culturally controversial topics. Okay? That's what Baylor's in a habit of. And they're not the only university and organization that does this, but they're certainly in a habit of just kind of ignoring what the Bible has to say about homosexuality. So let's just go ahead and talk about it. So in Genesis 19:5, this is Sodom and Gomorrah, and they called to Lot, "Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us that we may know them." Right? So that we may sodomize them. And then I think there was a fairly loud destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. Like maybe someone should tell J.D. Greer. I don't think the Bible just whispers about things like this. I think it's pretty loud about it. Then we have in Leviticus 18:22, "You shall not lie with a man as with a woman. It is an abomination." Leviticus 20:13, if a man lies with a male as with a woman, both of them have committed an abomination. They shall surely be put to death. Their blood is upon them. And so that's the angry Old Testament God, right? So now let's actually get to the New Testament. So Romans 1:26 and 27. For this reason, God gave them up to dishonorable passions, for their women exchanged natural relations for those that are contrary to nature. And the men likewise gave up natural relations with women and were consumed with passion for one another, men committing shameless acts with men and receiving in themselves a due penalty for their error. That's the same scripture I read from the beginning. Then we have 1 Corinthians 6:9-10. This is the Apostle Paul. Or do you not know that the unrighteous will not inherit the kingdom of God? Do not be deceived. Neither the sexually immoral, nor idolaters, nor adulterers, nor men who practice homosexuality, nor thieves, nor the greedy, nor drunkards, nor revilers, nor swindlers will inherit the kingdom of God. 1 Timothy 1:9-10, understanding this, that the law is not laid down for those just for the lawless and disobedient, for the ungodly and sinners, for the unholy and profane, for those who strike their fathers and mothers, for murderers, the sexually immoral, men who practice homosexuality, enslavers, liars, perjurers, and whatever else is contrary to sound doctrine. Jude 1:7, just as Sodom and Gomorrah and the surrounding cities, which likewise indulged in sexual immorality and pursued unnatural desire, serve as an example by undergoing a punishment of eternal life. And then there's a scripture I need to share with you. It's kind of the ultimate example for all you red letter Christians that are like, okay, if it's not in the red letters, it's not by God, even though if you believe in the Trinity, then every single one of the letters is red, right? So Jesus is recorded as saying this in Matthew 15:19-20, for out of the heart come evil thoughts, murder, adultery, sexual immorality, theft, false witness, slander. These are what defile a person, but to eat with unwashed hands does not defile anyone. So sexual immorality there, that's the word porneia, right? That's where we get the word for porn. And everyone would have known when this was written down, right? So in the Hebrew or the Greek or the Aramaic, they would have known what Jesus was talking about. He didn't need to explicitly make a list because he said it's sexual immorality. That would have been sex, any sex whatsoever outside of one man and one woman inside the covenant of marriage for life. So that includes adultery, which is already on the list, but that would have included homosexuality, would have included bestiality, it would have included polyamory, would have included all of that. So what are we to make of a story like this as we summarize the situation that's happening at Baylor? Number one, Baylor, including the president and the faculty, honest to goodness, thought that this was a good idea and that it wasn't going to be a big deal. And that's telling. Because these people live in such an intellectual bubble, it's an intellectually dishonest bubble, where they're never challenged on their positions. They all believe the same way. Some are very fervent and vocal about it. Others are fairly quiet about it. But they literally thought that this was a good idea. Like, think about it for all of you out there with little kids, which is most of you. When you're talking to your kid that's just broken something or just done something bad and you're getting them to explain to you why they did it, and you may even ask this out loud, it's like, wait, you thought that was a good idea? Like, at what point did you realize that wasn't a good idea? And for them, they were just in complete shock that all these bigoted, terrible, conservative Christians would be so mean pants to them after they accepted this grant. Number two, even if you fired the president, right, which they're not going to do, but even if you fired the current president of BU and put in, a true conservative Bible-based Christian, I still think Baylor's screwed, right? A story like this proves that the rot goes way too deep. I think the process of changing them, considering where they were based on where they were to now, I don't know that it's possible that they can right the ship. Now, is it feasible to think that if they got in a true conservative Bible-based Christian to be the president and to lead that university, that it could change? Yes. But even look at what Donald Trump's going through right now. A resounding victory in the Electoral College and the popular vote, a tremendous mandate from the American people. But even inside of the administration, there are still so many people that want him to fail, right? And so you have all these people, they're finally starting to fire these people, these federal government workers, which, by the way, side note, they're telling all of us that we need to be really, really sad for these people. Oh, look, they're outside their offices that they can't get into anymore, and they're crying because 1,000 people were let go. I don't remember the same news outlets doing stories about the tens of thousands of people that lost their jobs and businesses because of COVID. What about the business owners that had generational businesses. They're a third generation business owner or restaurateur or something like that. And they lost that because COVID, because they weren't considered to be an essential business. Where were the tears for those people? What about on day one when Joe Biden said no Keystone Pipeline? I think it was like 10,000 people that weren't going to have jobs, right? Where were all the tears for that? So you can save it. But inside of Baylor, inside of that university right now, how would one person, even if they were a tremendously, good conservative Bible-based Christian, how are they going to get all the bad people out? How's that going to happen? Because again, these are employees that are hard to fire, right? If they're tenured professors, they're going to be hard to get out of there. And then number 3, I think I got a couple more. Baylor will almost assuredly not change course, right? There's really no indication that they're going to change course here. What I think is going to happen is they're going to do what most organizations like this do in this circumstances. They're going to go dormant on their kind of pro-LGBTQ push. They're going to go quiet for a bit, but then they're going to come back with a vengeance. So it'll be likely after the Democrats take the House in 2026 midterms, which is likely to happen. That's odds-on favorite that the Democrats are going to take over the House, which will basically be the end of the Trump presidency for 2 years. But I think if they get the House, it'll embolden people like that. And then especially if Democrats eventually take over the House, Senate, and White House again, which will certainly happen. I mean, think about what would be happening right now if Democrats still had the Senate and if they had the White House, if Kamala Harris was in. 4th, and this is very, very important. Parents, don't be asleep at the wheel when it comes to sending your kids to a quote-unquote Christian university or college, or even K through 12 school, for that matter. Again, as I've said before, I think your only options now are vetted private Christian school and homeschool, and you can add some charter schools to that. But just because a school has a cross in the lobby or a big cross on the campus does not mean they hold to Christian biblical values, right? Look at Baylor. Look at any number of examples that I've talked about on the show of K through 12 or even universities, okay? I mean, there are questions that you as a parent have to have answered before you send your kid to a Christian college, university, or K through 12 school, okay? Does the school require faculty and staff to sign a statement of faith and a code of conduct? Do they? Because if all of a sudden one of the teachers is like, I'm actually a lesbian, right? Does the school have any recourse? Again, this is a private Christian school. So if they had these people sign a code of conduct and a statement of faith and someone came out as a lesbian atheist, it's like, okay, well, you're fired. See ya. It's kind of like when Tommy Lahren, I remember her, she was fired from the Blaze because she went on The View and she said that she was basically pro-abortion, right? So the not very conservative position, as you can imagine. And Glenn Beck's like, yeah, kick rocks, get out of here. And people are like, that's so crazy. What about free speech? No, you have freedom of speech, but you don't have freedom from consequences, right? So if you hold to this position, it's like, well, we get to decide the type of people that work here. It's a right to work state. Get out of here. Also a question that you have to have answered as a parent. Do they fire people if they violate the statement of faith or the code of conduct? Because let's say they do have a code of conduct and a statement of faith that you have to sign. If you violate it, are they actually going to fire you? Or is it, slap on the wrist? Hey, I know you say you like having sex with men and you're a man, but shame on you. Don't you do that anymore. Or at least don't talk about it or bring your boyfriend to class with you, right? Or do they just fire them, right? That'd be a good thing to know. Also, does the university have any pro-LGBTQ plus student organizations? Do they have any anti-Israel student groups? Do they have any pro-abortion student groups? Pro-BLM student groups? Again, this is a witch's brew of people, right? How many people do you know that are pro-LGBTQ but they're pro-LGBTQ, but then they're also pro-Israel, they're, anti-abortion, and they're anti-BLM. Like that person doesn't exist, right? This is like a menu of what these people are. It's like running down the back of their baseball card. And then the last thing, this is kind of the thing hovering over this entire story is, does your kid actually need to go to college in the first place? Because I grew up in an era where if you didn't go to college, you were a moron. If you went to trade school, it's because you probably got in trouble, right? But you have so many parents that are just like, well, you've graduated from high school, so let's just go on to college. Why? Oh, I don't know. And they just get a student loan that's guaranteed and backed by the government, and then they just go. But treat your kid, starting at the age of 16, like they need to give you a presentation as to why they should go to college. Okay, so if they're going to go STEM, science, technology, engineering, or math, right? Makes sense to go get credentialed out of college. If they eventually want to be a lawyer or a doctor, yeah, totally makes sense. But like me, I got a degree in communication, right? And then I got an MBA, but I got an MBA and in my program, I never even had to do a business plan, right? So it didn't set me up to run this business. I'm not using quantitative modeling class or whatever I did during my MBA to run a podcast and to run a men's ministry. Like I'm not using any of that. So for your kid, does your kid show any blue collar acumen? Because as Mike Rowe has pointed out with Mike Rowe Works, the guy from Dirty Jobs, for every 5 guys that are retiring from the trades, there are only 2 that are going to be replacing them. So plumbers, electricians, carpenters, welders, these guys are going to be gone. And then with only 2 replacing for every 5 that retire, can you imagine the amount of money that these people are going to be able to make? Like they're going to be able to write their own check essentially. Because in your community, you're going to have so few people. And again, if you show up on time and do good work, you're just going to clean house. So why do you want to send your kid to get a sociology degree or a philosophy degree or something like that at a college, only for them to graduate from college and the best job that they can get is a barista? Okay? So again, even with our kids, we're not anti-university, but James and Eli, they're not going to get to go to a university and we're not going to be, signing up to pay for it if they don't know what they want to do. Now, that doesn't mean they can't change their mind. Again, they're 18. Their brains are 7 years away from being fully developed. But at the same time, if you don't have any clue of what you want to do for a living, college, university, spending, $25,000 to $100,000 per year is not the place to figure that out, right? Maybe take your gap year. Maybe go be an intern. Maybe follow a guy around that does a job that seems somewhat interesting to you. And then you're like, oh, actually, yeah, I do like this guy. This guy's a CPA. Like, I actually understand these spreadsheets. This is exciting. Gets to help business owners and families, with their finances and all that. Great. Now you're 19. You go to school. You're going to get your degree in accounting and you're going to get your hours so you can sit for the CPA exam. Okay? As opposed to getting there and just like, oh no, I guess I'll just take some basics for a couple of years while I just get drunk and go to football games. I don't think that's the best use of your time. So parents, you got to have all those questions answered. And if you don't, you might be setting yourself up. Hey guys, real quick. According to a recent Gallup poll, only 31% of Americans express confidence in the mass media to report the news fully, accurately, and fairly. And that is the lowest mark in 50 years. And then on the entertainment side of things, you simply can't sit your children down in front of the TV screen anymore without worrying about them being propagandized by left-wing weirdos. I mean, you remember when that Disney employee came out? They were caught saying on camera that they have a not-so-secret gay agenda with their kids' content? Yeah, no bueno. So it is time for you to stop giving your attention and money to media and entertainment companies that hate your values and the truth. And that's why I want you to become an all-access member of Daily Wire Plus. And guys, they have an exclusive offer to Undaunted.Lifers, so I'll get to that here in just a second. But I've been consuming Daily Wire content for at least a decade at this point. I first became an all-access member of Daily Wire Plus just to support them, but they've given me so much value in return. So I've benefited, greatly from their podcasts and their articles and their documentaries and docuseries. And it's just been really helpful for me to solidify my conservative philosophies and thoughts. So guys, what do you get with an all-access membership to Daily Wire Plus? So you get live Q&As with Ben Shapiro, Matt Walsh, Michael Knowles, Jordan Peterson, and more. You also get groundbreaking documentaries like What is a Woman and Am I Racist? You get the entire Jordan Peterson library, so that includes his Exodus and Gospels series, which were just spectacular. And also you get full uncensored access to all of the Daily Wire podcasts. You get complete access to every article on dailywire.com, full access to Bentkey. So that is their children's TV show and movies app that has all the content you want, and you're not going to have to worry about them trying to turn your kids gay. You get two leftists, tears, tumblers, and you get a whole lot more. Guys, it's time to get your content and news from a conservative, patriotic company. Click the link in the show notes for this episode. If you want the link, it's getdwplus.com/undaunted. That's getdwplus.com/undaunted, or the link in the show notes. Use the promo code Kyle30 to get 30% off of your subscription. Again, go to the show notes and click the link, promo code Kyle30 to get 30% off of your subscription to Daily Wire Plus. Put your money where your values are and subscribe to Daily Wire Plus today. All right, let's stay in Waco, Texas, and let's talk about Chip and Joanna Gaines selling out to the LGBTQ plus agenda. So Chip and Joanna, they have become household names because of their mega hit show called Fixer Upper on HGTV. So it's kind of funny because, early in our marriage, my wife just loved HGTV, House Hunters, and all these different shows. And God, most of them were just absolutely painful to watch. But I actually liked that show because I thought Chip and Joanna, they were a nice, cute couple. They seemed to genuinely love one another. Chip was kind of a goofball. They seemed to actually really be helping people. And so they just kept growing and growing and growing. And then they just kind of went into orbit, right? They have their own studio. They had the Magnolia silos there in Waco, the Magnolia Market. I mean, they've really built a mega media and home design and furniture. Like, I was buying chairs for the forging table, new forging table set up. And I was at like Mathis Brothers here in Oklahoma City, and there's like a big Joanna Gaines display and all these different things. There's this displays at different stores and all that. I mean, these two, they're worth tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars at this point. And kind of the best part of all that is that they claim to be Christians, right? On multiple occasions, they both have publicly stated that Jesus Christ is their Lord and Savior. They participated in the I Am Second campaign. They've got tremendous videos on YouTube and different places where they gave their testimonies. They both regularly attend church. They reportedly go to Antioch Community Church down there in Waco. It's a non-denominational church. And then back in 2016, they actually got caught up in a little bit of drama because it was discovered sounds scary, right? That their church that they attend maintains that marriage is between one man and one woman for life, and that homosexual acts are actually sinful. I know, incredibly controversial, right? If you don't know anything. And for all intents and purposes, they both stood on business, and they just kind of let the drama eventually fade away. So it looked like we had this legit, beautiful, successful, charming, good old American Christian couple that we can try and emulate, right? Right? Well, the things that are guaranteed in life are death, taxes, and really famous Christians capitulating to the culture. So this is where I heard about a new show, right? So last week I heard that they have a new show. So this is according to El Decor, a great website apparently, El Decor on July the 2nd. Chip and Joanna Gaines are trading their fixer-uppers for something even rougher, reality without modern plumbing. Their latest Magnolia Network show, Back to the Frontier, is a major change for the design duo who once made Fixer Upper a household name. Premiering on July 10th on HBO Max and Magnolia Network, Back to the Frontier is a social experiment that drops 3 modern American families into the wild, literally, on 10,000 acres of untamed nature, stripped of every 21st century comfort. The premise is to survive as 1880s pioneers for 8 weeks, which means no running water, no electricity, and not a single smartphone in sight. The families are tasked with learning skills that kept homesteaders alive through brutal winters, farming, foraging, raising livestock, rationing supplies, and perhaps most crucially, figuring out how to coexist without the buffer of modern distractions. Chip and Joanna are executive producers this time, letting the wild do the heavy lifting while they watch from a safe distance. No demo day, just pure unfiltered frontier grit. The show's timing is spot on. In a world obsessed with digital detox and authentic experiences, this is the ultimate unplugged challenge. So when I heard about the show, I was like, well, that actually sounds kind of awesome. Like, I don't get to watch a lot of television. That may be something that my wife and I would actually enjoy. Except for one little small sticking point. One of the families featured in Back to the Frontier is a gay couple that is, quote unquote, married and has 2 adopted sons. The 2 gay men are named Jason, Hannah, and Joe Riggs. The boys are twins, age 10, named Ethan and Lucas. And, these 2 men acquired these twin boys after they commandeered them from their birth mother after paying her a convenience fee for carrying them for 9 months, otherwise known as surrogacy, right? Which, again, I know it's sticky to even mention this. Side note, isn't it interesting that these gay male couples always seem to want to adopt or create to adopt boys? Isn't that so interesting? Why don't they want little girls? Why don't these gay men want little girls that they have direct access to in their house? Something to think about. So it seems like the Gaineses are done defending a biblical stance on marriage. They're done with saying that homosexuality is sin. They're done with saying that there is a particular way that you should rear a child and raise them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. And we know this because they literally chose this couple. It's one of only 3 featured couples on the show, right? And before any of you, because you like them and you like their furniture, run to their defense and say that this was some sort of decision made by some higher up at the network or whatever, it's their network. They own it. They run it. They sign the front of the checks at Magnolia Network, okay? And we can rest assured that this is not some sort of oversight, okay? They're executive producers on the show. Sometimes you could be listed as a producer because you helped fund the trailer or something like that. No. They are executive producers, so they're in control of creative. So there's essentially not a single scenario where this happened without their foreknowledge and subsequently without their consent. There's no chance at all. This is a purposeful attempt by the Gaineses to parade this family in front of their loyal American audience and to display them as, a positive and loving family, and really, displaying them in the most positive and loving light possible, right? They want everyone to think that this kind of family arrangement is not only normal, but beautiful. Like not just normal, but moral. And there's another story that actually drives this point home. This is from Megan Basham again over the weekend. So she reported this. After hearing from multiple sources that Chip and Joanna Gaines have close professional and personal ties to a strange polyamory arrangement in which a husband and father brought another man into the home and they are now together while the wife remains to raise the 5 children, I looked into it. It is true. The man in question is Billy Jack Bronner, Magnolia photographer. I'm told that the Gaineses did not rebuke this situation, but instead have affirmed Billy Jack in his choices. The rot in Waco goes a lot deeper than I suspected. So again, just so you're keeping track at home, this is a guy that's married to a woman and they have 5 kids together, but this guy apparently wants to have sex with the men, and so he has a male kind of paramour boyfriend. So those two, while they're having butt sex, the wife is at home taking care of the 5 kids. And I don't know if she's okay with this arrangement or if she's just going along to get along to protect the kids. But you can find a bunch of pictures online of this guy, his gay boyfriend, and them hanging out with the kids. That can't be confusing at all. And apparently the Gaineses are big on it. They're fine with it. So my big takeaway on this story is what in the hell's in the water in Waco, Texas? Waco, Texas? Like, is everybody drinking 6 striped rainbows down there? I mean, good Lord. Like, you have the situation with Baylor, and then you basically have the king and queen of Waco, Texas, right? They're bigger than Baylor. And look at this. And when we get into a situation like this, when we see these Christian couples that are held up as this virtuous couple that we should emulate, there are some things we need to ask. Like, how should a Christian conservative public respond? And the answer is boycott. I know that makes some of you feel icky on the inside. It seems really mean and really judgmental, but yes, boycott. Now, I'm not actually a believer in forever boycotts, right? Unless it's something like Planned Parenthood where their express purpose for existence is murdering children. And I may have said some things, on the show in the past that would lead you to believe that I'm for like forever boycotts, but I'm actually fully okay with brands or companies or public figures falling on their swords and repenting. Like, I'm okay with that. Oh, okay, I made a mistake. Like, if Bud Light had came out and said, yeah, I know we sent the cans to that, trans influencer weirdo. Man, we shouldn't have done that. This was a lower level staffer that made this call and it kind of didn't make it all the way up the chain. Had it made it all the way up the chain, I would like to say we wouldn't have done it. That was a terrible mistake. We violated the trust of, the people that support us and our brand. Yeah, we're not going to do that again. We regret it. We're sorry. But the Gaineses haven't felt the sting of their sinful decision yet. As of right now, it has not hurt their bottom line of their business yet. Like, it hasn't caused them to be asked prickly questions that they have to answer publicly. I mean, hell, this story hasn't even gained much steam as of a recording of this episode, right? Most of the conservative commentators that I look at and look to and Christian commentators, most of them haven't said a word about this. Now, the Babylon Bee's on. They had a great post about Chip and Joanna Gaines release a new line of rainbow shiplap, which, it's kind of an insider joke if you know anything about their show. But if you Google, so I Googled their names over the weekend so I could prepare this episode. It's just a bunch of random articles. If you Google, it may have changed by now, but if you just Google Chip and Joanna Gaines, it was a story about how they took up ballroom dancing. Hey, how do they keep their marriage exciting after multiple decades? Oh, what's the next business venture? Nothing about this story, okay? Nothing about this show and that abominable gay couple. So Christians and conservatives, which, are not always the same thing, but they need to continue putting pressure on brands that openly hate them and their values, okay? Put pressure on these brands and these people, which the Gaineses are a brand at this point. I mean, that's why it's completely inappropriate for any of you to give Disney your money or access to your children until they prove to you that they're not trying to shove LGBTQ plus propaganda down your throats and down your kids' throats. Don't go see their movies. Don't go to their parks. Don't go on their cruises, right? That's why it's completely acceptable to continue not watching the NBA until they can prove to you, the consumer, that they're not going to put the name of a communist, Marxist, grifter organization right there on the court, right? Like they did with BLM during COVID. That's also why it's completely fine to refuse to subscribe to Netflix as long as they had the Cuties movie in their rotation, which was the movie I talked about on the show, where they had very, very young girls, like prepubescent girls, dancing in a sexual manner for the sexual pleasure of adults, which apparently was on Netflix for 4 years. It was just taken off their site in September of 2024. Like, I deleted my Netflix subscription and I never took it back, right? Because no, I'm not going to give a portion of my money to support that filth. I mean, the Gaineses need to feel the sting of this, right? They need to publicly repent of doing this. They need to publicly apologize for peddling sinful filth in the show, for supporting people inside their organization that are doing things that are demonic and ugly and sinful. And if they don't, then they deserve to go out of business completely. I'm rooting for them to repent. I don't want them to go out of business. I want them to come full circle and say, you know what? We kind of got high on our own farts. We were making a lot of money. We're making a lot of decisions. We kind of became our own gods there for a second. We thought we knew how to love, just like Baylor. They thought that they knew how to love people better than God does. And we realized, you know what? Actually, we don't. We're sorry. We repent. We'll be better. If they do that, I'm all fine with coming back and supporting them. If they don't, screw them. All right, next story here, the tragic floods in Kerr County, Texas. I mean, goodness gracious, this story is so hard to talk about, so I'll try to be brief. So at this point, every single person that's listening to this podcast is likely aware that on July the 4th, there was a deluge of rain in the middle of the night in Kerr County, Texas. The Guadalupe River rose over 20 feet in less than an hour. Absolutely stunning amounts of rainwater and flooding. The flooding was immediate and violent. As of July the 13th, that was the last time I checked, 129 people are confirmed dead, but there's still like 160, 170 people or so that are still missing. Basically, all of them are presumed dead at this point, but they have not found the bodies. They've not been able to find closure. Many of the victims were children. Many of them came from one summer camp, Camp Mystic. That was an all-girls Catholic camp. 27 of the girls and counselors are confirmed dead as of July the 11th. 5 girls and 1 counselor still remain unaccounted for as of July the 11th, but they are presumed dead. The stories are just absolutely heartbreaking. I mean, 2 sisters holding hands and holding a rosary together when they were found. I mean, just brutal, just absolutely brutal. I just can't imagine for those parents, just so unbelievably tragic. The director of Camp Mystic, Dick Eastland, he died while trying to save those girls, right? They got most of the girls out, but he died trying to save the last of the girls. So just crazy. The debris zone is still so messed up as of right now, and there's still been rain. So the search and rescue operations have been just incredibly difficult. There's been a lot of stories of heroism, but one amazing one, U.S. Coast Guard rescue swimmer Scott Ruskin, 26 years old, first ever mission. Right, first ever mission. He goes out there and saves 165 people by himself. But not completely by himself. He was with the rest of the Coast Guard, but he got 165 people to safety. And I heard a great story. It's very poignant. I think Glenn Beck talked about it. But, he's saving these little girls. And a little girl's like, can I bring my stuffed animal? Can I bring my bear? And you got to think, this is a Coast Guard guy, mission first. We got to get you to safety. Leave that behind. That's only going to drag us. He's like, yeah, of course you can. So the heroism, the courage, but also the tenderness, man, just incredible. And this So this story, you kind of see it bringing out the best in humanity. You see people getting their own personal helicopters and flying up and down that zone down there to try to find people. You have people coming out. I talked about this. You'll hear about it on a future Fortune Table episode. But H-E-B, a big grocery store chain down there, they have like response teams for this. I forget what it's called, but it's like their disaster relief, H-E-B. And there was a video someone shot from one of the parking lots. It's just 18-wheeler after 18-wheeler after trailer after whatever of H-E-B loading up their own materials, right? And shipping it out to the people down there that were affected by this. But a story like this has also brought out some of the worst in people because Donald Trump has broken people's brains. So there was a former Houston mayoral appointee named Sade Perkins. She actually had this to say.
I'm probably going to get canceled for this, but Camp Mystic is a whites-only girls' Christian camp. They don't even have a token Asian. They don't have a token black person. It is a all-white, white-only, conservative Christian camp. If you ain't white, you ain't right, you ain't getting in, you ain't going, period. And I think that context needs to be said in this matter. It's not to say that we don't want the girls to be found, whatever girls that are missing or whatever right now, but you best believe, especially in today's political climate, if this were a group of Hispanic girls, especially with them being in East Texas, it should be most likely Hispanic. If this were a group of Hispanic girls out there, this would not be getting this type of coverage that they're getting. No one would give a fuck. And all these white people, the parents of these little girls, would be saying things like they need to be deported, they shouldn't have been here in the first place, and yada yada yada. So before y'all come at me, before y'all start leaving hate comments on my page about, oh, these are just kids and they don't know no better, the parents of these children who are choosing, and it is a choice in 2025, it is definitely a freaking choice to go into East damn Texas and to make a all-white enclave, exclusionary just for white people, with all the black people in East Texas, with all the Hispanic people in East Texas. Somehow, some way, you have carved out an all-white, whites-only enclave in East Texas for your white children. Yeah, I have a problem with that. I have a big problem with that.
I mean, just think about the brain rot that you have to have experienced to think that. Your first thought is, well, I went to their website. I don't see any black girls. I don't see any token Asian girls or Latinx girls. Think about that. So, and again, by the way, just if any of you aren't aware, that was not a whites only camp, right? There's nothing in the application to apply to bring your girls to the camp that said, if they ain't white, they ain't right. There was none of that in there. I mean, just an astonishing level of idiocy and evil. But not to be outdone, Dr. Christina B. Probst, she's a pediatrician, she posted this on her Facebook while there were still people literally like dying and trying to be found. May all visitors, children, non-MAGA voters, and pets be safe and dry, praying hands. Kerr County MAGA voted to gut FEMA. They deny climate change. May they get what they voted for. Bless their hearts. I've got some descriptive words for this woman that I'll leave in my brain, but I'm sure you can fill in the blanks. So luckily, she was promptly fired for this. And to that I say good. You know why? Because someone that's this evil, as this woman clearly is, when someone believes such evil things, as this woman clearly does, we cannot rest assured that she would dispense her medical expertise equally for all patients. Right? I mean, she basically gave us the proof we needed to make that claim. I mean, let's just say a parent brings in their child, right? And the parent is wearing, an American flag shirt or God forbid, a MAGA hat. Can you guarantee that this evil witch would simply ignore that and try to just give the best care for the child? No, you couldn't. I'm glad she was fired, and I hope her professional life is completely ruined forever for this. Unless she repents, and then, okay, I guess she can come back into the good graces, but someone like that doesn't need to be anywhere near children. Now, a lot of people from the left have just loved this story because, it's going after Trump, and, they can look at something and they can say, hey, lack of funding affected this. There should have been more warning. Had there been more people, had Trump not cut funding, then, everything would have been fine. But let's just say that these crazy people are actually right, though. They're not, but let's just say they were. Are they saying that if Trump had, sorry, not Trump, but are they saying that if Texas had voted for Kamala Harris, had gone for Kamala Harris, if that county had gone for Kamala Harris, and if Kamala Harris was president, that the rainstorm would not have happened? Is that what they're arguing? That the Guadalupe River would not have flooded? Because there were literally, this has been well reported at this point, the same exact number of people employed to watch this situation with the weather centers and the emergency response in the federal government and local government. The same number of people were employed during that situation on July 4th of this year as there were during the Biden administration. What precisely is your argument? I mean, the reality is that they don't have one. They just hate Trump so much that they're willing to twist themselves into pretzels to try and make the administration look bad. It's ridiculous and terrible. So my big takeaway on this one, there are a lot of organizations that are taking donations right now. I'm sure a lot of them are great. The one that I would donate to, if I were you, is Convoy of Hope. So convoyofhope.org. That's in the show notes. They've got boots on the ground. They're helping people down there. They're helping with cleanup, all kinds of different things. So donate to Convoy of Hope. All right, next quick hitter here. Former President Joe Biden's doctor pleading the fifth when asked if he covered up Biden's bad mental and physical health. This is according to the New York Post on July the 9th. Joe Biden's former doctor refused to answer a single question Wednesday about the ex-president's health and cognitive decline, stunningly invoking his right against self-incrimination before slinking out of the congressional deposition. Dr. Kevin O'Connor is facing claims that he shielded the public from Biden's decline while the 46th president was in office and even covered up his powerful patient's advanced stage prostate cancer. So here's actually what that sounded like.
Dr. O'Connor, did you ever believe the president was unfit to execute his duties as president?
On the advice of counsel, I must respectfully decline to answer based on the physician-patient privilege and in reliance on my right under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution. I'm not a lawyer, and I must follow my lawyer's advice in this matter.
Let the record reflect that Dr. O'Connor has invoked.
So to save you from having to watch a much longer clip, that's how he answered all the questions. He literally just looked down and read that statement over and over and over again. That's all he did. So my big takeaway on this one is people have been saying one of, but I think at this point it's clear, this is the biggest cover-up in U.S. presidential history. Joe Biden was literally not our president for 4 years. Who in the hell was the president? People have guessed maybe it was the most evil woman in public life, Joe Biden, his son Hunter, right? When he was, not snorting coke off of strippers' buttholes. Maybe it was his chief of staff. It was members of his cabinet. But remember, he didn't have a cabinet meeting for like the last 2 years of his presidency. Not a single cabinet meeting. And one of the cabinet meetings he had, you know who ran the meeting? Jill Biden, right? So Joe Biden wasn't the president. A lot's been made of the auto pen. They're trying to, get rid of some of the things that he signed with that auto pen because it literally was not his signature. He had to be woken up every day and be reminded that he was the president of the United States, and he was just sent out there to kind of shuffle along and to be, and be in front of the camera for pictures and whatnot. But this is just an astonishing story that in the greatest country that has ever been produced by humanity, that for 4 years, there was a man that wasn't alive. And again, a lot of people are making a lot out of the fact that, he really declined towards the end of his presidency. Guys, if he was forced to campaign back in 2020, if he was not allowed to just sit in his basement and shoot highly edited videos, you would have seen this. He did definitely get worse over those 4 years, but he was terrible when he was running for president in 2020, right? Had there not been COVID, had there not been the BLM riots, had there not been all this unrest in the country, then Trump would have went to a sweeping victory and been right in for his second term, and it would have been consecutive, right? But to have a doctor go out there and to claim like privilege and say, I can't discuss things. Well, of course you can. That same doctor had discussed Joe Biden's health publicly for years. Everyone knew he was the president's doctor. And so whenever you're lying to the public, that's okay, right? To say, oh yeah, he's perfectly fine, healthy as an ox. Like I've never seen someone healthier. But now at this point, it's like, oh, I gotta plead the fifth so I don't incriminate myself. Just astonishing. Biggest cover up in the history of the United States presidency. All right, next quick hitter here, Planned Parenthood losing funding for 1 year. This is according to Live Action on July the 1st. The U.S. Senate voted 51-49 on Tuesday to pass the so-called Big Beautiful Bill, a budget reconciliation bill which included the defunding of abortion providers like Planned Parenthood for 1 year. The vote would have been 50-50 because Vice President J.D. Vance cast the tie-breaking vote. So Planned Parenthood themselves, they admitted this was something they sent out to their donors and sent out to other people to, make them donate and also to make them feel bad. They said that they may have to close down as many as 200 facilities. So, big takeaways on this one. Okay, great. Now let's make the defunding permanent. Okay? So they're defunded for 1 year. That is spectacular. That is absolutely spectacular. But taxpayer dollars in America should not be going to murdering children. Like, is this a controversial thing to say? Right? Because the majority of Americans, if they knew what was actually happening during abortion, and if they actually knew, oh yeah, this is an actual human, this isn't just a clump of cells, this doesn't just amoeba and form into a baby right before it comes out of the woman, if they knew that, they would be against this procedure, against the things that Planned Parenthood does. And also, Planned Parenthood is now the number one provider of transgender drugs on the planet. The number one provider. No, they do not need our tax money. But also on this story, okay, great. We've defunded them for a year, but defunding can't be the only measure to stop baby murder and baby sacrifice. So here's something that is sobering and should be sobering to all of you pro-lifers out there. The number of abortions that Planned Parenthood has done overall has gone up since the repeal of Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood v. Casey. It's gone up. Well, how's that possible? Right? Well, it's because blue states that love baby sacrifice, they've made it easier for Planned Parenthood to kill babies and other abortion providers to kill babies. And red states have either shut the doors entirely or hemmed and hawed on it a little bit. But another big factor is the ubiquity of abortion pill use. Okay? Again, when most people think about abortions, they're thinking about D&Cs, D&Es, DNXs, and they're thinking about babies being sucked out with vacuum tubes or partial birth abortions where they're pulled out by their feet, but their head is left in the vaginal canal, and they take, a piece of scissors and snip the back of the baby's neck, stick a suction tube into the baby's skull, suck the brains out so that the skull collapses, and then pull out the dead baby. That's what people think about, which still happens. All those things still happen here in the United States. But now it's just an abortion pill, right? You find out that you're pregnant. You take kind of this two-step course of abortion pills and boom, not pregnant anymore. You just expel the baby into the toilet and flush it, right? The ubiquity of these pills and organizations that are sending these pills to your house. This is basically like a vending machine, right, for most of these people. So pro-lifers have to get real. And on the legislative side, yes, these facilities need to be shut down. But also you need to shut down the ability of people being able to send you death by mail. All right, next quick hitter here. The University of Pennsylvania stripping male swimmer Leah Thomas' trophies and medals and issuing a formal apology for letting him compete in women's swimming events. So this is according to Daily Wire on July the 1st. The White House has struck a deal with the University of Pennsylvania that requires the school to strip trans-identifying male swimmer Leah Thomas of the titles he won on the women's team, the Daily Wire has learned. The University of Pennsylvania will restore all titles to female athletes that were misappropriated by male athletes, according to a landmark agreement between the Trump administration and the University of Pennsylvania, a White House official shared with the Daily Wire. Under the new agreement, the school is promising to comply with Title IX, the federal civil rights law that prohibits sex discrimination in schools that receive federal funding. The University of Pennsylvania will not allow males to compete in female sports or use female intimate facilities and will adopt biology-based definitions for male and female that comply with the Trump administration's executive orders on the issue. The school will also send a personalized letter of apology to each impacted female swimmer, according to the agreement. So I've seen a lot of people posting about this story, a lot of conservatives, claiming victory on all this. I think that one thing that we can say is the trans agenda is in complete retreat at this point. I mean, to think of where we've come in the last 4 or 5 years on this issue. Conservatives are just no longer willing to go along to get along on this issue, and I think that's great. But the thing is just kind of like with the story earlier with Baylor, I think that Democrats and pro-trans, pro-LGBTQ people, they're just going to go quiet for a while until they get the White House and House back, which is definitely going to happen. I'm not saying it's going to happen in 2028, but 100% we can guarantee, unless, Christ comes back, the White House, the Senate, and the House will be taken over by Democrats, certainly in our lifetime. Okay? So my big takeaway on this one is, I'm sorry, but this just isn't good enough. And unfortunately, it never will be, because it's in the past, right? Leah Thomas was allowed to compete. Leah Thomas beat the girls that he competed against. He stole their opportunities from even competing, and in some cases, stole their medals and trophies. These races can't be redone. They can't be redone. We already watched the races. So these apologies and these letters, they're not worth the paper they're printed on. Like, I remember this. I remember, what was it? When it was discovered that Reggie Bush, him and his family took a whole bunch of money when he was at, USC, and they had to vacate. I think I got this straight. So he had to give his Heisman back, which I think he's gotten back since or whatever. But he had to give his Heisman back. Did they give the Heisman Trophy to the person that got second place, whoever that was? No, they didn't. Right? Because Reggie Bush, already on national television, went up and accepted the Heisman. He did a speech. It already happened. So when USC had to vacate all the wins or whatever, so those games didn't happen. I think that was the year that they played OU in the national final and they beat them 55-19 in the Natty, right? It was just an absolute drubbing. I think that was Matt Leinart, Reggie Bush, if I've got my facts straight. That game just didn't happen, right? Reggie Bush didn't push Matt Leinart into the end zone at Notre Dame, to win the game in the last second. None of that happened. It's ridiculous. When people are, we're just going to vacate the wins. I'm sorry. Those races happened. I think there's 10 women that race all at the same time. There was one woman in every race that Leah Thomas was in, Will Thomas was in, that didn't get a chance to race for a championship, didn't get a chance to race for an All-American spot, didn't get a chance to race for a medal or a trophy. You can't undo that with an apology letter. I'm glad that the University of Pennsylvania is acknowledging this, but you have to remember, they're acknowledging this because they were being pushed by the administration that their funding was going to be taken away. This is all about dollars and cents. They don't actually believe this. They believe that Leah Thomas is a woman. They believe that, 6'4" man should be able to change in a locker room with his twig and berries flopping around. They're completely okay with that. But the Trump administration's like, okay, we're going to take away all your federal funding. Oh, just kidding. We apologize. We're going to remove Leah Thomas's name from all the books. And, even though they've already made all their money and gotten all their LGBTQ donations to the university and all that, they're not going to give any of that money back. But yeah, we're just going to pretend like that never happened. No. You screwed those girls over. You screwed them over. And they have missed out on those opportunities and will have missed out on those opportunities for life. Sending them a letter and a trophy in the mail ain't going to fix nothing. All right, last quick hitter here. A 1-year-old baby being mauled to death by the family dog. So we're going to play a game, okay? I'm about to read this story, but instead of saying the breed of the dog, I'm just going to say blank, okay? And let's see if you guys, by the end of the story, can guess the dog breed, okay? So this is according to KWTX on July the 8th. Authorities in Ohio say a blank fatally attacked a 1-year-old girl last week. According to Tuscarawas County Sheriff Orvis Campbell, deputies were called to a home on Lake Road regarding a dog attack just before 6 p.m. on July the 2nd. Campbell said in an initial 911 call, dispatchers couldn't hear anyone, but they eventually connected with the mother during a second call, who said the family dog had killed her baby. Deputies arrived at the home to find a 1-year-old girl with bites to the face and throat. Family members identified the girl as Blakely Blosser. Her joyful essence shone brightest when she was playing with her brother. Their bond was pure and filled with laughter, offering moments of joy that will forever reverberate in the hearts of our family, loved ones shared during her obituary. Authorities say she was pronounced dead at the scene. It was about as terrible of an ordeal we've come across in a long time, Campbell said. The mother told deputies she was walking inside the home with the child when the dog attack happened. Deputies said they observed defensive wounds on the mother, who said she tried to stop the attack. According to Campbell, the mother told them that the dog did not have a history of attacking anyone, but had shown signs of aggression to other dogs. Campbell said the father, who was not home during the attack, later euthanized the animal. We will hold on to every memory, every picture, and every video forever in our hearts, the family shared. Blakely was deeply loved. The case will be reviewed by prosecutors, but charges are not expected to be filed. So I actually want to put a picture up on the screen right now. So Landon, shout out to my editor, Landon. Let's go ahead and put the picture up on the screen. That's the little girl. Give y'all some time with that. Look at that little girl. That girl is dead because her mommy and daddy wanted to own a cool looking dog. Big takeaway on this one. How many more little babies have to be mauled to death by pit bulls before we realize that the breed is too dangerous for private ownership? Every single year, it's this. Every few weeks, it's a story like this. Pit bulls are mauling to death infants and toddlers and elderly people. Why are we okay with this? I actually do a full breakdown of this on episode 377 of this podcast, but to summarize it, pit bulls were bred to kill bulls. It was called bull baiting. Okay, so they would grab on to the snout of a bull and hang on to it until the bull died. A pit bull that weighs less than 100 pounds is going up against a huge bull, killing it. They were also bred to fight other animals, and not just fight them until they stopped moving, fight them until they died. Okay? Now, much of what I'm about to give you was compiled research by a guy named Merritt Clifton. He's the editor of Animals 24/7, so that's an animal news organization that focuses on humane work and animal cruelty prevention. Pit bulls make up less than 6% of the dog population, but they're responsible for 68% of dog attacks and 52% of dog-related deaths since 1982. So Clifton says that for 32 years he's been recording this, and it's been more till now. There's never been a single year when pit bulls have accounted for less than half of all the attacks. Again, 6% of the dog population in this country. There's never been a year where they have accounted for less than half of the dog attacks in this country. One person in the United States is killed by a pit bull every 14 days. 2 people are injured by pit bulls every day in the United States. And in the 10 years from 2009 to 2018, pit bulls killed or maimed 3,569 people in the U.S. and Canada. So guys, are pit bulls cool looking dogs? They sure are. They're beefy. They got that big head, right? Me personally, I've only ever been around cool pit bulls. I grew up in a town where I had friends that fought pit bulls for money, right? They would have their pit bulls fight other pit bulls for money, right? And then they would just have them in their houses with their kids. But pit bulls are wild animals. They're not domesticated. They should not be allowed to be pets, right? And again, go back to that episode. I dispense with all this nonsense. Save me the, well, you've never met my pit bull. He or she is a total sweetheart. Gosh darn it, they would never hurt a fly. Well, the family pit bull of Blakely Blosser apparently had never hurt a fly, right? That was until it ripped the throat out of a 1-year-old girl. So there is that. I mean, imagine saying something stupid like this. We've had a pet rattlesnake in our house for years. You know, he just kind of keeps to himself and he's never bitten anybody. Imagine saying something like that and thinking it's a good argument. I mean, it's just astonishing. The fact that you have a pet rattlesnake in your house that hasn't bitten and killed somebody yet does not mean that the thing is safe. And then you got people that are like, well, you know, any type of dog can attack and kill somebody. Okay, when's the last time you heard of a golden retriever killing someone? A giant schnauzer, a Maltese, a golden doodle, a poodle. Because guess what? If we euthanized every pit bull, Rottweiler, and Doberman in this country, we would essentially have no deaths via dog. None. We'd have none. Every now and then someone's got kind of a weird wolfy mixed dog that gets out, and then there are kind of wild dogs that become feral, and then, a big group of them will like attack a hunter or something like that. But again, if you got rid of pit bulls and then Dobermans and then Rottweilers, basically no children are being mauled to death by animals. What is the argument against it? You like them? You like okay, guess what? We'll grandfather in your dog. No breeding whatsoever of those dogs. If a pit bull is seen on the street, they're shot on sight, euthanized immediately, right? There's not a good argument against it. And again, I've had people before that are just, good friend of mine. He's like, well, Kyle, what are you going to ban next? Are you going to ban pools? Kids drown in pools all the time. What are you going to ban ladders? People fall off ladders and die and get hurt. Well, guess what, idiot? Pools can't grab you and hold you under. A kid can fall into a pool. A kid can get tired and drown, but the pool's not going to chase you down the street and grab you by your throat. A ladder does not have a mind of its own. A ladder is not going to chase you down and hold you by the throat until you die. Because you morons. This is a sentient animal. It can make its own decisions, and it doesn't matter how well you've trained it. And I've talked about several stories on the show. There was one where the family pit bull that they raised from a puppy in a house where the dog was not abused, it was given food and water, it was taken out for exercise and taken on walks, mauled both of the children to death, almost killed the wife. Again, give me the argument as to why these animals should be allowed to live. Because here's the thing, and I am unapologetic in this stance. I will never prioritize the life of any animal of any breed over any innocent human being, especially a child. I will never do that. So you pro-pit bull apologist people need to reckon with that. Because y'all know how much I loved Roman the Giant, my giant schnauzer. If he had shown aggression towards my boys, like at any point that he was going to attack them, I would have taken him out into the backyard and shot him in the freaking head. Because I love that animal. I love that animal more than I love some people. But that's an animal, right? So I remember Matt Chandler saying this before. A child with Down syndrome has infinitely more value than Secretariat does. The most famous racehorse of all time. I think basically every racehorse that races now has some sort of thing in its genes from Secretariat and all that. So a kid with spina bifida has way more value than that horse. Why? The horse wasn't made in the image of God. And we have these animals that are mauling and killing image bearers of God. Little kids and elderly people. Again, it's not 38-year-old dudes that do jiu-jitsu that are getting mauled to death by pit bulls, right? They may get attacked, they might get hurt, but they're pulling elderly people out of wheelchairs and they're taking advantage of children. Again, this woman walked into her home with her 1-year-old baby and the pit bull just decided to freak out and kill it. Okay? So for all you pro-pit bull people, I'd love to hear your arguments as to why we should still allow these wild animals to be privately owned. All right, guys, that'll do it for today. Before we go, we are going to do a quick resilience boost. At Undaunted.Life, our mission is equipping men to push back darkness with content that forges spiritual and mental mental resilience, spiritual, mental, and physical resilience. There you go. Nailed it at the very end. But don't forget, we are a donation-based ministry, so Undaunted.Life/donate. Again, subscribe to Daily Wire. Get dwplus.com/undaunted. Use the promo code Kyle30 to get 30% off of your subscription. And then I've got everything else in the show notes that I talked about on today's episode. And just remember, convoyofhope.org. That's in the show notes as well. Let's support these victims there in Texas. convoyofhope.org. Thank you for listening to this podcast. Wherever you're listening to this, please subscribe, rate, and leave us a positive 5-star review. If you want me to come speak live at your event or on your podcast, just shoot me an email to info@undaunted.life. That's info@undaunted.life. Follow us on Instagram and like us on Facebook, and check out our website for everything else, including how to donate to keep more content like this coming your way. Just go to www.undaunted.life. And as always, we want to thank the band Holy Name for allowing us to use their music for our content. The music on this podcast is their song Perpetua, which is off their self-titled debut album on Face Down Records. The links are in the description. I'm your host, Kyle Thompson. Remember, keep pushing back darkness, keep forging spiritual, mental, and physical resilience, keep seeking the Lion of Judah.